Hello and welcome back to the Hybrid Warfare Analytical Group's UCMC podcast, where we delve into the realms of Russian disinformation, propaganda, and the influence of hybrid warfare in 2024. Today, we're going to be speaking about the Oreshnik missile that was launched in Dnipro on the 21st of November with my colleague and my boss of our hybrid warfare group, Volodymyr Solovyev. Volodymyr, thank you for coming on today. So, Russian propaganda, as always, flood the information space with threats of nuclear war, that this is a step and the first big step to a nuclear catastrophe. A lot of the messaging we were seeing was times of how long it would take for this missile to reach different cities, what it means, and how the world would look after this. It's also important to think about firstly, this missile affected Ukraine, it attacked Ukraine. And something that Russian propaganda was rather pleased about was that after all this time that Ukraine has asked for Western countries to use Ukraine as a polygon for experimenting with its weapons, Russian propaganda laughed and said that they have jinxed themselves. And now we are doing the same by experimenting with their weapons on Ukrainian territory. But it's important to understand that Ukrainians, it doesn't really affect Ukrainians as much as it does the West. I think that's down to a few reasons. Firstly, Ukrainians are living in war. They have been for the last 10 years. So on Ukraine, it didn't have a huge impact. The psychological warfare part works on the West. This is the West's misunderstanding of what is actually happening between Ukraine and Russia, and oversimplifying a very complex issue. Also hyped up by years of pop culture of nuclear war escalation by films, TV series, and other kind of pop cultures as well. And also by a kind of monarchical secrecy when Putin came out to his and did his press release. A part of it was very misleading, not very clear what he meant, not really clear of the steps of what's going to happen next. And this was also very much so for the internal audience, so they can argue between themselves what will happen, giving this kind of ambiguity of the next steps, which obviously only cause more anxiety. So that's it from me. What about you, Volodymyr? So in terms of it achieving its propaganda goal, do you believe it did? And I've spoken about a bit about the reaction from the West. Do you think it achieved its propaganda goal in terms of reaction from nuclear not nuclear skeptics, but those most fearful of nuclear war?
Yeah, we witnessed some warnings from Putin's traditional sympathizers in Europe, like Hungarian authorities or Serbian president. But I don't think that the initial goal of Kremlin was to push Ukraine to the negotiation table, because in time when the new administration of United States will come into power soon, in 2 months, Russia tries to show its ambitions, not just in Ukraine, but at the continental level. From my point of view, the initial goal of this MBRM attack on Dnipro was to show to the Western leaders Russian capabilities to start new negotiations regarding resuming intermediate range nuclear forces treaty, which was shifted during first presidency of Donald Trump in 2019. And Russia understands that it is losing the time, because soon after, a few years since now, United States will deliver Typhoon missile launcher with SM-6 Tomahawk to Germany. And also, I'd like to mention that during NATO 2024 summit, several European countries like Poland, Germany, France, and Italy signed a memorandum of understanding regarding developing of ground launcher cruise missile with a range of more than 500 kilometers. Russia perceives that as a threat, and it is obviously trying to engage the West into some kind of reestablishing negotiations regarding mid-range missiles. So from my point of view, 21 November attack on Dnipro was the Russia's attempt to launch this pressure on the West, and we will soon see more propagandistic attempts to push forward the Western leaders to negotiate on their missile restrictions. So that does not simply reflect Russia's goals in Ukraine.
So what do you think, Volodymyr? Do you think the use of Oreshnik MRBM, new stage in Putin's preparation for negotiations with Trump? You touched on this a little bit earlier, but does it give any kind of credence for negotiations? Do you think this kind of nuclear blackmail will work on a Trump administration, or what do you think? What's next?
Yeah, from my point, the good thing is some kind of continuity in the matter of Ukraine, because the announced National Security Advisor Michael Waltz appeared to commend Biden's decision to allow Ukraine to use anti-person mines. And also, from my point of view, lifting restrictions regarding hitting Russian military depots and air defense systems with Western missiles also is a trump card in Trump's pocket. So the latest decisions made by Biden's administration, they didn't came in time, unfortunately, but now they are strengthening negotiation position of the United States. And I think that Putin, from his side, is also trying to act simultaneously and raise the stocks. So he show his capability to engage European countries into the war with middle-range ballistic missiles. I do not perceive this scenario as plausible, but at the same time, on 22nd of November, Mark Rutte, General Secretary of the NATO, had a meeting with Donald Trump. So that is a sign that the Western leaders are trying to establish mutual understanding of their security issues and to pursue Trump in terms of how the NATO will act in response for the nuclear blackmail imposed by the Kremlin.
So it was really used as that psychological instrument in order to kind of get a foot up in the potential negotiations that will happen with Trump. I mean, there will most definitely be some kind of negotiations that try to start between Ukraine, Russia, and using America as well. But it's, as we've discussed in this conversation, more mostly used as a instrument for psychological warfare to fear monger those in the West that already feared nuclear war, which it should be. Nuclear war, it should be feared. But Russia is playing into people's fears even more. Thank you very much for your time, Volodymyr. And until next time, guys. See you soon.